Stray is a very good game. One I've already talked about in terms of the joy of being a cat in this video's more uplifting companion piece. But when I was writing that micro essay, I kept coming back to one specific critique that didn't fit well with the point, but I found impossible to ignore. Unfortunately, talking about it here does require significant spoilers, but I think it's a worthwhile discussion. So here's your warning, go play Stray if you're at all interested, but what lies ahead may be heavier than what you were expecting. So, what is my one issue with the game? It's in part related to my general desire to experience more like the game's opening. The lush green, my cat friends, a world clearly in shambles, but with nature having moved back in. I have to admit, one of my favorite aesthetics is the ruins of society overwhelmed by nature once again. Games like Horizon Zero Dawn and The Last of Us have captured the serenity of these kinds of human absence well, and the opening of Stray provides that same beauty. But more than just the look, it was the carefree way I bounded into every corner, searching the pools of water for signs of fish, casually stopping for a drink from a puddle, loudly meowing and being answered by a chorus in return. The lack of pressure, just me learning how to navigate the ruins and leap between pipes like they were specifically built for that purpose. But I knew what game I was playing, and I knew where it was going and that it would probably be fast. I also recognized the small team behind it and was already impressed by the level of detail and life in this small corner of the world, excited to experience more. So when the inevitable happened, and our poor Stray fell into the depths of the city, I was sad, but ready to face the challenges ahead. What I wasn't entirely ready for was the anxiety. I'm a lifelong cat owner and lover, something I recognize made me much more scared for the feline's safety than I would be for any kind of humanoid video game character. Especially after seeing the easy companionship shared by our Stray and their fellow cats, I wanted nothing more than to get back outside and find them again. And I was so afraid of any more harm that might befall our tiny protagonist. Of course, the result of this was that the first time a flood of the mindlessly destructive Zerks came at me, I panicked a bit, still making it out of the situation, but devastated by the little pained cries when one would leap at me, latching onto the Stray's back until forcefully shaken off. I made it all right to the slums, but I always knew that more of that danger was coming, and I might not be as lucky next time. I was most terrified to find out if I could die, something I usually just see as a small inconvenience in most games. Needless to say, this anxiety stuck with me the whole game, actively becoming worse when I had my first death to the monstrous Zerks, and further still after the immediate violence of the Sentinels in the factory and prison sections. Each bit of progress brought tangible hope, but along with it, the possibility of not even making it back outside by the end. I never really thought that would be the conclusion of the story, but each new friend we made and inevitably had to leave behind weighed on me. At least our cat had a good friend and companion in B12, the two looking out for each other and even risking their lives for the other on numerous occasions. But even that didn't allay my fears, particularly after our only weapon was destroyed, leaving us once more defenseless to the hordes that wished to consume us. None of this is actually part of my problem, but seeing as that comes as part of the end, it feels necessary to set the stage with what brought me there. Stray is a game that very clearly asks you to consider whether something is good just because it's all you know. Unsurprisingly, the city feels like a critique of the world we live in, with clearly defined social hierarchies between areas illustrated through height and access. inhabited by hundreds of robots who are just trying to find themselves in a world that was clearly built for humans. The slums are as they sound, unclean and filled with piles of trash, blocking off passages even in this largest section of the city. The robots here have community, but also a great amount of fear, as they are the closest to the deadly Zerg threat. The upper tier of Midtown has benefits of cleanliness and robots enjoying pursuits like music and fashion, but it is patrolled by an extremist and violent police force, an automated artifact that has grown out of hand after hundreds of years left to its own devices. Our first introduction to this part of the city is the arrest of an innocent, and our last, a discovery of the full cruelty of incarceration by these sentinels. A small section exists between these two, Ant Village feeling like an oasis compared to the blocky structures and neon lights. The robots here feel the most at peace to an observer, though the danger required to reach it is more than any but us would likely survive. And connecting all these places are passages filled with danger and unavoidable destruction for the robots who inhabit this world and don't possess the natural speed and agility of our Stray. But they live their lives and imitate what they know, even when it makes no sense. They fill bars and restaurants despite the inability to eat or drink. They care for plants and work jobs and create art. They made their own language, leaving behind the English we occasionally spot on the relics of the old world. All of this due to fear. Some fear change, some fear the authorities, most fear the outside world that they were closed off from hundreds of years prior. Humanity locked itself in the sealed city because the world became a barren wasteland and wound up dying anyway due to plague. And most robots accept it should remain locked because they don't know what they might find. But most of all, they fear death, something that should be an oxymoron for artificial life, but is a very real danger in a world with monsters that devour metal as though it were organic. This is the thing that keeps them trapped and stagnant, most never even questioning the ways in which it defines their lives. So, this world is built on fear, and it's probably only fair that I feel some of that myself. At a certain point, B12 remembers they were once a human, possibly the last human consciousness preserved in this universe. They too desperately want to make it outside, having once promised their human family they'd open the city again. And though that family is gone, they want to keep that promise. So now even more, all I want is to reach that with them, to show the beauty I experienced in the first 5 minutes to the companion I've since spent hours with. I want to share that hope with every robot I've met along my journey, giving them back a choice they've stopped believing is even there. We escape danger, we make friends, we are captured, we escape. But not without the sacrifice of friends. Robots who accepted our quest for the outside as important as their own dreams to reach it, and doing everything possible to enable it, even if only for us. By the time we are heading to the control room, I am desperate to make it all worth it. Make every sacrifice someone made to get us here have meaning. This last area we see is clean and sterile, and there is already a sense of melancholy to the place. The robots here have not achieved consciousness, so locked into their routines they don't even notice that a cat is not a human. There is no sentience, and no sense there ever was, with the pristine floors and carefully polished surfaces. We make our way into the control room, turn on the computers, and begin the process to open the dome, and finally end a lockdown spanning centuries. I know as soon as we dismantle the first lock, what is going to happen. That still does not make it any easier. As my dearest friend gives their life to finish our task, admitting they knew they would not survive the electrical feedback from overriding the locks, they fall to the ground, motionless, with barely time to say goodbye. The stray bats a paw at them, once, twice, like I had done once before with a successful result. But nothing happens, and I curl around the broken husk of my friend as a beautiful sky opens up that they never got to see. We see a montage of scenes, all the robots we met seeing the sky and being illuminated with natural light for the first time in their existences. It destroys the Zerks, it deactivates the Sentinels, it brings with it hope and the promise of change. All while we lie on the floor, having lost the person who made it possible. Eventually, the cat has to get up. The city is finally open, and they deserve to go back to the life they considered home. Soft cat paws pitter-pat on the spotless floor of the station, heading towards the once sealed doors to the outside. No longer burdened with the harness, once again, just a cat. The doors open, and I am again greeted with the beauty of green reclaiming the concrete. I see light at the end of the passage, steps leading the stray up them to finally rejoin the world it probably used to think was everything. A pause, the cat looking back a final time, before moving on and out of sight. There's a lot to be said for the beauty of this ending. It was a tragedy I saw coming, but still knew I needed to reach. As I write this, there are tears streaming down my face, despite it having been days since I first completed the game. Likely as I'm recording, there will be more crying. B12 was an invaluable friend, the perfect companion in a world so alien that it couldn't even recognize a cat. But when I cry for their death, it isn't even about the loss of that being. What I find myself so devastated by is the loneliness of it. To go from a caring community of fellow cats at the start to no one is almost too much for me to bear. I sat through the names of everyone involved with the project. Blue 12 Studio, Annapurna, the localization teams, QA testers, beloved pets and family, desperately praying for a post-credits scene, or anything that might assure me that the stray wasn't going to be alone. But when all that faded in was the title screen, all I could do was continue crying. I cared so much for this small creature, and all I wanted was to know they would be okay, that they wouldn't be completely alone again. The scariest times in this game were when I was alone, knowing the dangers, and without anyone to lean on. I know there are people who won't understand this, but I've known and loved many cats, and while it is true they are often solitary creatures, I've found it's more about engaging on their terms than them not wanting company. Throughout the game, I meowed at robots hundreds of times, brushed up against their legs whenever I could, even took a nap on one's chest. These were actions that I, as a cat, wanted, a closeness I chose to seek out, if only to share with them the joy of a small, fluffy visitor. To me, a cat is a social creature that wants to love and be loved. For all that is wonderful about the game, it is this flaw that I keep coming back to. I feel incomplete, hurt in ways I usually don't let myself think about with regards to my own cat and the limited time I know we have together. I feel raw and afraid, and like all the hopefulness of the ending is negated by my intense worry that the stray will never find their friends and spend the rest of their years wandering alone. They too just found new joys in connection, and it's already gone. I'm grieving for the loneliness of a fake cat in a fake world, like I just saw it happen in real life. Because that's what it feels like for me. It would be unreasonable to ask for a different ending. What we were given is poignant and thoughtful, and it is the story they wanted to tell. The team worked so hard to bring it to life, and they deserve to be recognized for that. But even so, if I could have just one thing, it would be the once more meow at all my friends and hear that wonderful chorus of meows right back.